All right, welcome back to the Elias Macco Show and the third hour of the program. As part of the work we do here at CJD, I'm reading a ton of news. I've always been a news junkie. I'm reading news virtually every hour of the day. If I'm not sleeping, I'm probably consuming news at one point every single hour. So, of all the stories I've read, ladies and gentlemen, I read every single publication imaginable, especially on the local front. Of all the stories I read this week, the one that caught my attention from the headline through every single paragraph was one written by our next guest. Chad Dunlevy from the Montreal Gazette joins us now. The piece in the Gazette that he reported on this week, here's the headline. Drug dealers have taken over our downtown Montreal building, residents say. It's our pleasure to welcome Chad Dunlevy onto the program to talk about his story. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Listen, it's the type of thing where I say to myself, I don't want to see this type of story in this city. I don't recall seeing these stories growing up, but I may have rose-colored glasses and not remembering how things were. I'm well aware. How did this story come across your desk or come across your day-to-day where you decided you need to report on it?
Well, these tenants held a press conference because the Center for Research Action on Race Relations, who they do a lot of stuff, race-related stuff in the city, standing up for people for their human rights, etc. They sent out a press release and they held a little press conference in front of the building earlier this week, and so they had several elderly residents of this building. It's a low-income housing complex for elderly, run by the OMHM, which is the Office Municipal de l'Habitation de Montréal. It's a municipally run public housing complex. So they held a little press conference to say what was going on in the situation. So all these residents were gathered up front, and they just explained what was happening and what they've been dealing with for many months.
The quotes that come out of that press conference are striking. I'll read a couple for our listeners. It's very unsafe after 7 o'clock. You can't leave your apartment. Another person saying, I feel like I'm trapped in a cage. Tell me about what these residents are truly going through here.
Well, see, yeah, this building is it's right near Atwater. It's right by Cabot Square. It's the Manoir Charles Dutot. So it's about a 20-story building. There's about 170 residents that live in there, so they say everyone I think is like over 60 in the building, but there are a few elderly residents you wouldn't believe, but that are apparently selling drugs in the building out of their apartments, and people get led into the building to get drugs. So there's Cabot Square. There's a whole situation with homeless and drugs. I don't know, other things happening there. There's that whole area. There's a lot happening, and I don't know how prominent this is in other buildings or where else people are getting drugs down there. But this is a place that people come in and are ringing doorbells and coming in to get their drugs, and then they don't just leave the building. So these people are saying that, like you said, after 7 p.m., people are passed out in hallways. Residents described, like one woman described, like somebody passed out after midnight in her hallway, and she called police. And I think they call police so often there that, police were like, well, can't you just ask them to leave yourself? And she's like, well, not really. I'm a little afraid. I'm an elderly woman. So she said police finally came 2 hours later, but after the ambulance had already come to take this person away. But these elderly people are dealing with people passing out in their hallways, with people. A neighbor caught someone else's neighbor caught somebody trying to break into her building. She'd only been living there, into her apartment. She'd been only living there a few months. So it's quite the situation. And the thing is that these people, you have to. A lot of them would like to leave their apartments, but you have to live in these public housing buildings, municipally run ones, for at least 3 years before you can demand a transfer. So they're kind of stuck there. That's why she said she feels trapped.
So they're stuck, and they also say police are not taking them seriously. Okay, so what can you say to that? What do the police say on that? What is the work that's happening here? Because you would think with stories like this, the police would have to get involved.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, it's a situation. I mean, the police don't always respond when you ask them for comment, but they did get back to me fairly quickly And they did say that they have they're well aware of the situation in the building. They weren't feigning ignorance, but they said from their eyes it wasn't as bad as these residents are making it out to be. They said they're in contact with the residents. They said earlier this year they went door to door in the building and spoke to all the residents about their concerns, and they're working with the OMHM, which is administrating the building. They said that they could have another such meeting if need be. They said they have foot patrols and they have a community agent. They said the commander of the local station, Station 12, is aware, and she has passed by. And they have these community patrols as well, mixed with police officers. So, but they said that nothing they have seen in the building, interventions on site have not identified any major security issue. A few incivilities have been observed, but nothing to the point of a major situation of violence or criminality. So it's a little tricky. There's like two different stories here, but the OMHM, which administers the building, has said that they have helped. On their side, they also responded and said that they're aware and they're trying to work with the tenants in the building. They helped put together like a residents committee or a tenants committee, and last week, and that they're meeting with them in the coming days and to address their concerns. It's hard to say what's being done because the tenants are obviously not satisfied with what's happening.
With Chad Dunlevy from the Montreal Gazette talking about this low-income public housing complex near Cabot Square. Residents are fearful. They say drug dealers have taken over the building. It's interesting what you say there about your discussions with the police and the criminality, right? It comes down to, passing out in a hallway and making people fearful. Doesn't that check the box of criminality or not? Maybe maybe the police saying it doesn't, right? On the fact that it is low income public housing, in your estimation, how core is it to this story? I know that there have been condo complexes that say they feel the same way in other parts of the city, but part of me says, low income public housing, maybe they don't get taken as seriously as, a wealthy condo would. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. You have to think that stuff would get dealt with pretty quickly and wouldn't be tolerated. But, in a wealthy condo building, would you have people selling drugs out of the building? There's so many things that they're caught in these kinds of situations with, a few bad tenants or tenants that get caught up in the wrong things in there. And suddenly, everyone's kind of stuck. Like people say, the tenants say they've complained to the OMHM, the administration, and they've said that, about people coming and going in the building. And they've said, well, there's nothing we can do if people let people in or people coming into the building let other people in. There's nothing they can do about that. The tenants have said they've asked for 24-hour security. And they've said the OMHM has said they can't afford it. So, like a condo complex would have, security around the clock, right? These guys, that's why they say after 7, like in the evenings. I think they have people there during the day, checking the front door and stuff. But in the evenings, there's not somebody there, and that's when things get a little out of control.
So, as you mentioned off the top, right, Center for Research Action on Race Relations doing this press conference where they're shedding light on this. But tell me about the full court press. Tell me about where they're moving forward to try and get some action.
Well, they're really Fo Niemi, who runs, he's the executive director of the Center for Research Action on Race Relations. It's not his first rodeo. He knows how to press all the buttons, and so he's demanding a full investigation. He's talking about investigation by the Human Rights Commission. He's saying that a lot of these people are from diverse backgrounds. There's Black people, there's Asian people, there's Latin American people, there's also white, like Quebecois, Anglo and Franco people who live there. He said it is a good model of everybody living together, except they don't have security and dignity. That would go with that. But he's demanding investigation by the Quebec Human Rights Commission, by the Minister of Health, the city ombudsperson, and he also helped them call the press conference and was putting this all together. He helped them organize in a way, and there you go. We wrote about it earlier this week in the Gazette, and now we're talking about it on the radio. So hopefully this attention is going to draw some eyes to this and get some action.
I'll encourage our listeners to go seek out your piece in the Gazette, right? And one of the things, we'll leave our listeners with this, like one of the quotes, right? from residents of the complex that they say they came to live in peace. There's no peace, and the word going around: snitches get stitches. Is there a fear here of people that will speak publicly on this?
Yeah, well, I think one guy asked to not use his last name, one of the people I interviewed, and yeah, these people, and they were, they did make it clear that they were taking a risk by speaking out, and you have to imagine if there were drug dealers involved, then you can imagine those kind of threats happening, and I think these people do fear for their safety.
Cha, thanks for the time, and have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Cha Dunlevy is a reporter with the Montreal Gazette.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.